Thank you so much for coming this evening to help me launch my new collection of poems, Eavesdropping in Plato's Café. The title poem, Eavesdropping in Plato's Café, exists in a nebulous other world where Plato is the owner and proprietor of a juke joint cafe and bar, where the ghosts of philosophers congregate each night to relive their worldly obsessions. I'm not going to read that poem tonight because it's rather lengthy. The book itself is divided into three sections. The first section is called World Soul, poems about the earth and the transcendental beauty of the earth. The second part is Ghost Dance, in which the title poem appears. These are poems that exist in a kind of a nebulous other dimension. And finally, Endgames, poems that deal in part with the essential beauty of the cycle of life and death and rebirth. The first poem I'm going to read is from this last section, and it is in part a paean to the beauty of life and the beauty of death, and it's called To Age Slowly Without Pain. The insubstantial beauty of smoke lilting upwards from an unseen stack on a clear winter morning lifts the heart as briefly as it rises and then fades away with the wind, attacks the senses with acute demand as sharp as battle lances brandished centuries ago in long-forgotten China, where the Confucian texts of war first were caricatured on slim sticks of bamboo strung together with silken cords that crumbled in time, leaving only confused and jumbled accounts of high ground, bloodless coups, and counter spies. The insubstantial beauty of a sunrise as it clears the eastern horizon, spreading fingers of golden light through bare boughs across frosted rooftops, covering untold joys and sorrows, nightmares and waking dreams, forgotten the moment light pales through the window, never to be recalled until the moment when death calls and all forgotten dreams are remembered. The insubstantial beauty of morning's river, placid and green, clear and clean, as though one could walk across its mirrored surface to the other shore, where the night before gold and red light slashed the tide like knives glittering out to the center, where dreamy boats flow upstream, pushed by the steamy breath of river spirits and river gods, who watch us from the fourth dimension and shed frozen tears over our ignorant sins and our transient beauty. They watch as children wake from fitful sleep to see air-to-ground missiles explode all around them, shattering roofs and walls and bodies in their village, sending mushroom clouds of golden fire spiraling upwards into the black mountain night. Beautiful, beautiful, the sight of death who comes roaring down from above from million-dollar flying machines flown by deadly angels who are the agents of the dark star disguised as Christ. The insubstantial beauty of life as it morphs into death. That precise moment when the moth leaves the mouth and flies to we know not where, to some other dimension where other frightened children sing one eternal note of dismay, where bands of white light hum in unison mantras of reckless joy, forever flying above golden rivers, glowing from endless sunrise. The next poem I'd like to do for you is a poem that, let's see, what page is it on? It's a poem that, it's hard to describe, but I call it a time-traveling science poem. It deals a lot with quantum mechanics. Even though I don't understand quantum mechanics or string theory, I'm really fascinated by the metaphorical and metaphysical beauty of some of the concepts in modern physics. And the title of this poem comes from St. Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, wherein he tells his new converts in the ancient Greek city-state of Corinth that we now see as through a glass darkly. Through a glass darkly. The layers of oversight have been changed. Bare, ruined choirs stain the landscape dripping with rain in late November. The 21st Century Limited exists in tandem with the 16th and the 1st, when early Christians walked the earth, were persecuted for forsaking Jupiter and Roma and Nero, the living god. The 23rd century is here too, with its impossible robotic perfection swelling above the iron trees and glass domes that cover still self-functioning cities, emotion sensors in every room to quickly suss out layers of psychic stress, and oversight with an always watchful, awful eye toward change and maxi-fluidity, winking above the intersections of streets and hallways. Is this not the Ides of March, asked Brutus, and Shakespeare writes this down in his panoptical play that plays with time simultaneously perceived. A clock in ancient Rome, chimney tops above the Tiber, or is it really the Thames? And a pulpit for Antony's flaming speech. In 200 years, will mourning doves and deer searching together for acorns and seeds seem an anachronism too silly to speak or think? As silly as Newton's planet still towing the same old millennial line, elliptical routes gone haywire the way of the dino and the dodo. But they will of necessity still be there. By definition, in the quantum merging of past, present, and future, all rolled into one jelly, evenly spread on slices of the time-space continuum, likened unto a universal loaf of wonder bread floating in the 5th dimension, where you may have parallel lives as a nun, a peasant, or a czar. Applications of entanglement have reached pure states of non-locality. Newton would have been shocked off his pedestal, and all the sages of antiquity could not have predicted this spooky turn of events. If one can actually call invisible actions and non-matter current phenomena, fie on it! Fie! 'Tis a fardeau not worthy to bear. Science is back once again to magic. Or perhaps it never left it. All is sorcery, all alchemy, voodoo physics, and multi-universe bubble dome, micro and macro expansion, infinity plus one. Thank you. Well, thank you. All right, the next poem I'd like to do for you, actually, it's Selena here. Selena McCracken is a friend of John Beecham, who is not with us, but he had a radio show in Louisville, Keep Louisville Literary, I believe it was, on Art FM. And I wrote this poem a year ago on Independence Day, July 4th. 2 weeks later, John interviewed me, and I read the poem for him on the air. And after it was over, he said to me, man, it sounds like you woke up with a chip on your shoulder. So here's my July 4th chip on the shoulder poem. Freedom Day, early morning thoughts on July 4th. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All white men who own property are created equal. This, of course, excludes black people and Indian people and women and poor white whiskey tangos who have no pot to piss in. Nonetheless, it is a beautiful morning this morning when all Americans are freed from work, except those who work at Walmart and McDonald's and Burger King and Pizza Hut and Kroger and Safeway and Piggly Wiggly. Freed to pursue barbecue picnics by the lake and drunken relatives and loud firework displays that proclaim with colored gunpowder our freedom. Oh, say, can you see those rockets bursting over your villages for the past 10 years in Iraq and Afghanistan? The cluster bombs and napalm exploding in jungles 40 years ago in Vietnam. Just look at the beautiful tracers shooting out from the sides of ironic helicopters bearing the name of those we have subdued. Apache! Geronimo! Shouted those paratroopers who leaped out of planes on D-Day 2 years or so before I was born into this land of freedom and glory. The list of those we have invaded to protect our freedom is too long to tell. Hello, Philippine Islands! Hello, Nicaragua, Guatemala, Panama, Grenada, Cuba, Tunisia, Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Japan, and all the islands she laid claim to, Germany, Italy, Mexico, the Korean Peninsula, the Five Nations, the Creek Nations, the Cherokee Nation, the Chickasaw Nation, the Shawnee Nation, the Sioux Nation, the Comanche Nation, the Yuma, the Pomo, the Ute, the Cheyenne, Blackfoot, Crow, the Mandan, the Sauk and Fox, the Navajo, the Hopi, Apache, Pueblo, all those half-naked, starving savages we smallpoxed and grape-shot out of existence and gave the remaining few their freedom on reservations in Oklahoma where the wind comes whipping through the plains. Freedom to be Americans just like you and just like me. Oh, America, you never got over your youth. All those slap-happy, penny dreadful tales of Billy the Kid and Wild Bill H. went to your head and stayed there like lead poisoning. You talking to me? You must be talking to me because there ain't no one else. Draw! And two Lone Star College students shoot it out in the OK cafeteria, letting some air into each other and plugging a janitor who got in the way. Oh, America, what teenage boyhood fantasies roll round in your empty head. Bang! Bang! You're dead. You're one dead Injun. And I'm the rootin' tootin' cowboy on this block with my cap gun and my Glock. Thank you. Song of God. Living in the land of God, we see but dimly as through scrim of fog. So much is hidden from our privy view. Daily we are bidden to rise up and listen long to our leaders talk as they talk through strong martial voices. Intermediaries on screens chalked with pie charts and actuaries whose heads bob and prophesy war, disaster, horror for a future we must prepare for by making sacrifice, keeping ever vigilant eye out for terror planned by dark, silent neighbors. Spies of our enemies, the dogs who live in the land of Magog and worship the false god. Living in the land of God, we must bow to the one God who knows and sees all. I, God the Almighty, who chose to live among us as common sod, who nightly burned like us and daily froze and bled himself for us so that we lowly might eat and drink of him, suffer with him, to make ourselves free of all that is earthly, all unclean, unseemly habits, unprescribed behavior, all action not written down for his dream. The great dream of God that screams out the awful name of the Savior while we are shaken awake, the teeming multitudes down on their knees facing the west, while the heathen choir of Magog bow down to the east, and we all chant as one our prayer, our plea for cleansing, war, and fire, for the legions to sweep down where the forces of Magog gather, and to drown them all in a sea of blood, a burning sea from the mouth of our Father. Living in the land of God, we are lucky to have thinking machines that do our cleaning, our fighting, sweep clear the battlefields of bomb and enemy, sweep our homes clean from dirt, dust, and sin that come from the skins of our children, whose lives are fraught and lean, who sweat through the thin seconds of demand and duty. We must perforce lay upon them to make them brave and worthy to run the machines that drop death upon the heads of the dogs of devil-worshipping Magog, pitiless drones whose eyes are the fingertips of our offspring, flipping the switch, clicking the keys that drive our robotic justice over heathen terrain to do his will. For we are God's servants forever, and forever will we bend the knee in duty, in obeisance, vow to kill all those who in enmity follow his enemy. And we greet each morning as the crow caws gladly his orison shrill, his prayer to God cleansing his craw, as the great vulture circles the sky, gliding, ceaselessly watching, silent of cry, glittering red eye, wide open, dilated nostril breathing, always alert to do God's bidding above the river of Gog, bequeathing such quietus to morning's gray chill, like a battlefield after the drones and droids have left it clean and still. There is a river that flows wide and long through the land of Gog, a river of blood whose high tide washes up the bodies of those few who are unholy, unfaithful, traitors who have not washed themselves in the true life's blood of he who bleeds for all, he whose blood is a river, God the all-knowing, vengeful God of God, who will destroy the false god of Magog like a child who steps on a toy. And we are all so lucky living in the land of Gog to be democratic and free, unlike the enemy infidel who dwell in sand beside no cleansing river, whose red tides may dispel the pall of the mortal curse. By baptism in eternal water, we sit by these shores and rehearse the final coming of the Lord God unto this earth, to free our souls by fiery sword, to rise us up after the final battle when our killing machines give birth to death for our enemies, hot metal spitting forth righteous grape shot and 200 rounds per second, bicameral eye, scanning parking lots and blind alleyways, apartment hallways, office corridors, beckon them forth to the final judgment. The bloody reckoning foretold as it was etched on golden pages by the gray prophets of old. Now in the land of shadow and fog, the land of shades where holy sages go after faithfully serving great God, our reward to see as through scrim or dark glass, the visage grim of eternity glimpsed through a curtain.
The first poem I want to do in this set is the first poem in the book. And it's a celebration of the beauty of nature and the search for a mystical oneness with the divine force that permeates all things in the cosmos. Another day in paradise. The idle rusticity of spring in her green languor, the abundance of her, the sweet charm of her laughter echoes down through my network of nerves coiled out through my spine to thrill the cobra root of my soul. Fine, the ballet dance of 5 white butterflies above clover. Fine, the flash of a robin's breast as he fights off a challenger to his domain, his patch of wormy soil, his meal ticket for his mate and younglings beneath a lush thicket of brush. The heartbeat tick of a clock in the lull between bird call and thrilling song chills the mind, reminded of the final conductor's railroad call. This is your own ticket to ride the one-way railway to forever. The Sunset Limited's tidal stop at the Delta, spreading out her cars in shearing motion, fanning out across the gulf between us and that far-off ocean of never-ending sleep. The fractal logic of a maple leaf
gently moving at branch's end, repeating the pattern of each of her neighbors, but each one slightly different, each one a green sibling to the others, telepathically talking of the sun's generous photosynthesis, reaching up and down through branch after antlered branch, down to her limbs' heartwood, to the kundalini of her sappy spine that sings out praises and charms to spring, matching the beat of wings that come to rest in her arms. The green of it all, from lawn to canopy of tree, calls out to my very life's blood, flooding through my heart, up to my brain, weary with postmodern tedium and rush, the ennui of too much information. Like plants from another planet who wrap their hungry tendril tongues around you, surround you, choke you until there is nothing left but a dry husk emptied out, head full of useless trivia about theft or murder or everlasting war between everlasting warring factions on TV, in the movies, in newspapers, on the internet's vast distraction machine. Oh, green paradise lost in the sterile minimalism of techno-oppression. Bring back to me the fragile logic of your mystery, veiled by Maya's marathon dissemination, running always to torment the psyche, the soul, the spirit longing for the peace of deep vertical thought and meditation, fraught with Spanish waves of taut inquisition. Let us sit then beneath a willow tree, Buddha tree, beside a goldfish pond, surrounded by bees and flowers, dreaming away the day as if it were the strings of an instrument tuned in heaven, fretting out the notes of joy and bliss writ on vellum in ancient notation, hugged by a passion felt deep down to the core of creation's volcanic roar, lifting the thrilling heart above the turmoil, startled by a glimpse of forever, always and ever and anon, rolling on and on and on until something stops you and you are hurled back upon the ground, panting, sweating, face lifted up to the sky through grass and leaves like the face of Bernini's Saint Teresa, ecstatic in afterglow, laid low beneath Cupid's arrow, ravished by God's holy communion. The next poem I'd like to do for you is, I've always been a devotee of Eastern spiritual thought and spiritual wisdom. This poem was inspired by the words of Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching, a book of spiritual wisdom. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. Tao, of course, a T-A-O, means loosely the way or the path. And this poem is called Ode to the Tao in Winter. The overture of Rossini's Semiramide galloping in my ears and periodically punching me upside my head while the sky's on fire beside me as I race down the highway at speeds unimaginable in the 19th century. The clouds' gray calligraphy spells out the Tao before me. Best to be like water, which benefits the 10,000 things and does not contend. Run silent, run deep, be still like a woodland pool in winter, mantled with layers of ice, wherein golden leaves are captured, still with the dead and deathless chill of grace. Be a bridge between heaven and earth, sky and mud, what is in and what is out, not like prophets of a vengeful, jealous God, but a conduit for the creative force of the universe, the Father, Mother, the one who dwells in love. Favor and disgrace are like fear. Humor and distress are like the self. Respect the world as yourself. The world is your lodging. Love the world as yourself. The world can be your trust. Let me then embrace the joy of my life without anger, without fear, without worry, and live most fully in the ancient Tao. Master the existing present. Understand the source of all things. Be one with stone, with grass, with tree, with sun and moon and cloud, with river forever until my span has spun out at last its golden thread and the fates cast it free with their mystic scissors. I'd like to read for you a poem, not in the book, as I said, but this is what I wrote about my experience having the open heart surgery. It's called April Fool's Day, the day I fooled death yet another time. Coming as close to death as I will ever get, and yet not even remembering it. A prayer to Jesus and Athena and the threefold goddess while strapped to the gurney, riding down the antiseptic hall to bright-lit theater of surgery, where the man-god surgeon waits with saw and robotic scalpel in hand, anxious to stop my beating heart so that he can sew 3 leg veins onto my life muscles chambers, bypassing thus blocked arteries as quickly as he can so as to get to his golf game by noon. My heart did not beat for 4 hours, I am told. An external pump circulated my blood through my arms and legs and lungs and brain. I don't even know why I think of this. It is so mad that Wordsworth or Coleridge would not have believed it possible. Shelley might have, but then he was the mad scientist of romantic poetry. Saint Hugh of Grenoble, who died in 1132, great reformer, eloquent preacher, feast day April 1st, April Fool's Day, when they rolled me in and put me to death for 4 hours. Thank you for being with me, even though I did not see a vision of your face or even pray to you or see the tunnel of white light one is supposed to walk to or not. Who remembers such things? What I do remember is that I was pulled back from the abyss by some unseen hand for some ordained purpose, and now I must live the rest of my life as if it were a gift, a promise made that now I need keep. We don't often think about our skeletons, encased as they are by our flesh, but and our skeletons indeed may only see daylight sometime way in the future when an anthropologist may dig up our bones and try to determine who we were. But our skeleton is the superstructure of our lives upon which our entire being hangs. This poem is called 206 Bones. The skin that hangs from this skeleton is cloud stuff, tree limbs on a hilltop seen from a moving vehicle, ineluctable like foxfire in night wind, vanishing within seconds after sight. The tegument between these bones feels right, tightened to keep me strung high and low, cap a pay from waist to crown to toe, and then below all things connective like my Lord's own puppet all unstrung. Femurs found in a dig in Egypt, metatarsals uncovered beneath centuries of dust in Mesopotamia, and parts of a skull in a helmet in a river in England. All these things were once living and breathing, creation's transitive explosion of love, and here I still am in the middle of it all, alive and wondering how it all will end. The thigh bone connected to the hip bone connected to the love bone. Now hear the word of the Lord. Or is it Darwin? Why must we choose as if from a menu of entrees in the bistro of history? Garden of Eden or Olduvai Gorge? Cain and Abel or Australopithecus africanus? Noah or Homo erectus? Revelation or walking fish? Which or both or none? Can anyone judge or even begin to care? Too many questions without enough answers. This is the way it always must be. I can feel it in my bones, all 206 of them rattling around in a cage of flesh, bone house, brain house, sea road of muscle and fat, waving us on into infinity's mystery. This final poem I'm going to read for you deals with the mystic urge to merge with purity and spirituality of life as seen through the lens of nature. Resurrection and ascension after reading the morning news. Such properties as these do make me funk. I shall go outside and become one with ducks, who must for now remain invisible, even though they seem indivisible from my poor twisted psyche today in a world full of grand plans and final disarray. The drama and dharma of the purple iris petal and the innocence of the wild daisy's kiss all attest to this: there is a power deep down things, a leafy testament from grass to trunk to bird wings, lighting on branch tips, swinging in the breeze of spring's morning, lifting light alike to ants and me and all of creation. A rare honeybee at my window becomes an ageless Blakean angel, reborn in aura glow of all 7 colors of chakra's rainbow. Her buzz, a mantra hymn to what is holy now, and always will remain so, the tidal flow of connected electrons that spin and show how vital and how sacral is the soul of earth, the grand cycle of birth and life and death here on this plane of existence where we wrestle with sorrow and joy, doubt and belief. Are we really here on this struggling planet, or do we dream this brief butterfly dream for only a moment, mate then with the pleading cry of our mother, die and rise up again, bleeding whole and free? Will we discover a new creed, a covenant covered in green leaves that breed forth regeneration, resurgent songs sprung from the great well of divine imagination, spun from the words and mind of the holy multiverse that dives and swims through all planes of existence, thrives on the blood of the poet, the aura of angels, the high and low call of all thrumming, humming, trumpeting life seen in the heart of a flower, the vein of a leaf, the blood-filled arteries and lungs that breathe with the beat and pulse of the heart of the stars, fire of our godlike sun, our goddess moon that shine down their brilliant sum of enlightenment upon our heads, ready to weld, to meld with earth, with air, with water, with all things living, cold with all things dead, in the mold of clay we are shaped with, in the crystalline air that is our stairway that we escape with, one at last with the encompassing matrix of existence. Thank you.